President Trump, how are you, sir?
Hello, Mark. How are you?
Well, I'd rather be in Florida, I can tell you that, than Virginia.
I know. The weather's beautiful in Florida. Always beautiful in Florida.
Well, Mr. President, there's been some breaking news over the last few days. It appears that classified material has been found in 3 different locations in the Biden world. What do you make of this?
Well, it's incredible, actually, with all the talking that they did. You know, we have a secure place at Mar-a-Lago. We were dealing very nicely with NARA, which is a radical left group, as you know. Does anyone understand that they've red flagged the Bill of Rights and the Constitution of the United States, and they red flagged it as dangerous or potentially dangerous? And this is the people we're dealing with, but we were nevertheless dealing with them fine, as we're supposed to. If you look at all of the different legislation that's been passed over the years, I mean, we're supposed to be dealing with them and talking to them. We were doing that. All of a sudden, they raid Mar-a-Lago, and we had it secure. Look, Mar-a-Lago, you know Mar-a-Lago. It's a very secure place to start off with. But the Presidential Records Act, if you take a look at the Presidential Records Act, that's there to protect the president and also the country. And I fall under that. Plus, I have the right, as you know, to declassify documents, and the vice president doesn't have that right, has no rights to do that. He comes under the Federal Records Act. That's a very, very strict act, whereas the Presidential Records Act is very much different. And we were living up to that, and then all of a sudden we got raided, I guess for publicity reasons, but I don't think that publicity worked out very well for them. And now they're starting to find all of these highly classified, not just classified, highly classified documents. And if you look at the picture of him in the Corvette and take a look behind it in the garage, they got papers strewn all over the place. It's a mess of all the papers. I've never seen anything like it. And they just got announced, I guess you probably know it because you usually announce these things before anybody else, that Hunter Biden is the actual owner of this house, Hunter Biden. And you know what his reputation is and the problems he's had over the years. So it's a disgraceful situation. They appointed a Trump-hating prosecutor, hates to a level like you wouldn't believe. His wife, his sister-in-law, all of his friends, all the big Trump haters. And this guy is, really an atrocious Trump hater. And the man they appointed as the special, I call it prosecutor in my case, the special counsel in the other case, is a much different type of person.
Mm-hmm. They appointed a special counsel, prosecutor in your case,
right,
who prosecutes genocidal leaders who slaughter people.
Yep.
Now, why would they pick somebody like that? That's rhetorical. Let me ask you this. So Merrick Garland sits on this for 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
He sits on it through the midterms election.
Right.
He appoints a special counsel against you on November 18th. By then, he knew about at least one batch of these documents that Biden had. By then, he had assigned this U.S. attorney from Chicago. It's all secret. They don't say anything. And but he appoints a special counsel of the kind that you're talking about, who's been effectively admonished by the U.S. Supreme Court in a unanimous decision that he overreached in the prosecution of the former governor of Virginia.
Right.
He goes out of his way to appoint a man like that. You must be wondering, you had leak after leak and do about your situation, including lies like you had nuclear secrets. And in this case, they're able to keep it secret for 60 days. Doesn't that demonstrate the partisanship of all this?
Well, it's terrible. It's a terrible situation. But I must say, 4 days ago when that was announced, the anchor at CNN, they were showing a clip of it, said, no, he's done it again. She's referring to me. And I haven't done anything again. These are all hoaxes, whether it was impeachment hoax number 1, number 2, the Mueller scam, the Mueller persecution, all of these different things and so much else that even people don't even know about. This has been a weaponization of the Justice Department and system like nobody's ever seen before. And the people get it. They understand it, and they see it, and they don't like it. But it all sort of changed 4 days ago, when Biden is admonishing me for documents that I'm allowed to have. As president, I'm allowed to have. When I flew into Florida, I landed before 11 o'clock. We were in Mar-a-Lago shortly thereafter. I was still president of the United States, I believe, until 12 o'clock. and I was in there. That's a big difference too. And we were allowed to take this. Many presidents took things with them. Clinton took, and in fact, he won a case called the Sox case, and they were taking it out in Sox. But Clinton took, and Nixon took. They actually paid Nixon, I think, $18 million for the things he took. He sued them, and they ended up paying. And I think that's really how the Presidential Records Act came about. But if you take a look at Bush, they all took. But what I take, it's a little bit different. And what I was allowed to take. And again, the president has the right to declassify, all sorts of rights that a vice president doesn't have. And again, the vice president comes under a very, very severe act. Nobody likes to talk about that on television, but the Presidential Records Act is, I'm supposed to negotiate, I'm supposed to deal. I gave them a lot of stuff. I was ready to give them the stuff that they raided. You know, they come in, all of a sudden they raid. They said, oh, could you put an extra lock? And, you know, Mar-a-Lago is built like a fort.
It is.
You know, Mar-a-Lago was supposed to be Marjorie Meriwether-Pust, E.F. Hutton built it, the wealthiest people in the world at the time. And they built it, and they built it really as the Southern White House. It was gifted to Washington, and then Jimmy Carter turned it back because he thought it was too expensive for the United States to have that, if you can believe it. That was lucky for me. But Jimmy Carter, in one of his many great moves, turned it back. They gave it to him, and today it's a very valuable thing and it's magnificent. But it was actually built because of its security. It's got high walls all over. It was built because of the security. But on top of that, I have security, and on top of that, we have the Secret Service here. So we had a very well guarded situation. Whereas you look at where they're finding these documents in an office with no security, or in a garage with absolutely no security, in a house that wasn't even owned by him, that was owned by Hunter. And I think you're going to find a lot more, because in Delaware, I understand they have a tremendous stash of documents. And I'm sure when you look at that, you're going to find documents that you didn't even believe. And the biggest problem, Mark, is it's China. China gave $55 million to the University of Pennsylvania, where I went. I went to the Wharton School of Finance at Penn. And, I'm disappointed in them as a school. But China was paying, through that money, Biden got $1 million a year for a think tank, if you can believe it. So they paid Biden $1 million a year out of the money that China gave. Now, if China wants to see those documents, I'm sure they would say, come on, let me show you.
The National Archives, when you raised Obama a couple months back and said, look, he took all these documents, which he did.
Yes, he did.
They jumped to his defense that that the furniture place that he put him in, that they secured it and so forth and so on. But Mr. President, these are Obama administration documents. So clearly the National Archives did not get all